Hello, I'm Minnesota's Secretary of State, Mark Ritchie. Thank you for serving as an election official. You have a very important role in administering fair, free, and honest elections. Our office has produced this training video to provide an overview of your duties as an election official and to highlight recent changes to our voting procedure. This year, our theme, Minnesota Votes, is a message that underscores that voting is an active, statewide exercise in democracy. While we historically have the highest voter turnout in our nation, we can always do better. I welcome your feedback and suggestions. With your help, we will make sure every eligible Minnesota voter feels welcome and able to vote. For you as an election official, this presents an exciting opportunity. It's challenging work, significant, rewarding, and vital to our most basic and essential democratic process. You are serving the people of our state and our nation. On behalf of myself, the Office of Secretary of State, and all Minnesotans, I thank you for your service and for your commitment to ensuring fair, free, and honest elections.
As an election judge, you make a crucial contribution to our democratic form of government. That's why it's so important that you perform your duties according to the laws of our state and nation. This presentation will give you an overview of what every election judge needs to know. But it is just that, an overview. For complete details, consult your official Minnesota Election Judge Guide. And when questions come up, be sure to ask your head judge, clerk, or county auditor. While much of this presentation will be familiar to experienced judges, there are also new requirements for this year's elections. Every election judge should watch this presentation. Then, to refresh yourself on new issues, you can choose the What's New button on your DVD main menu, or fast forward your videotape to the end where the same What's New information appears. Election day itself is a long one for a judge, so be sure to plan ahead for your personal needs and obligations. And don't forget to vote yourself. If you're serving as a judge in your own precinct, you may vote during regular voting hours. If you're serving outside your own precinct, you should vote by absentee ballot before Election Day. Contact your municipal clerk or county auditor to get an absentee ballot. Setting up your polling place involves many tasks, so be sure to arrive early. We'll cover the most important steps here. For all the details, see the Election Judge Guide. The first order of business is to take the election judge's oath. All judges must wear badges which must identify a role such as election judge, head judge, or trainee judge. Badges must not express political affiliation. As in past years, do everything you can to make the voting area accessible to voters with disabilities. The polling place must be accessible to everyone. That means several things. Be sure there's a designated disability parking place and a clear, accessible path to the building, into the building, and through the building to the polling place location. Also, clear away clutter, unlock doors, and prop open your interior doors if possible. Secure mats and rugs. Determine the most accessible route through your building for voters with disabilities and post plenty of signs showing that route. Be sure your voting booths, judges' tables, and other polling place equipment is set up to allow an efficient movement of voters through the process. A sample polling place layout diagram can be found in your Election Judge Guide. Also set up voting stations especially intended for seniors and voters with disabilities. You must have at least one voting station that is accessible to voters who use wheelchairs and any other voters who prefer to sit while marking their ballots. This station must contain a chair and a table of appropriate height. If you expect to have many voters who would prefer to sit, set up more than one of these stations. Your polling place must also include a voting station containing the specially designed AutoMark ballot marker. The AutoMark provides large print, audio instructions, a keypad, and the ability to check for ballot marking errors. The AutoMark is a machine that marks a printed ballot that can be counted by a ballot counter just like other ballots that are used in Minnesota. It allows a ballot to be marked in a number of different ways, At the same time, it provides a way of displaying the ballot that might be easier for some people to see, including older voters or those with low vision. 2 people should lift the AutoMark and place it on a wheelchair-accessible table. You must also provide a chair in the station. Set up this special voting station for privacy and independence. Be sure only the voter can see how the ballot is being marked. Turn on the AutoMark. Position it so its screen is not washed out by light from nearby windows. There's more about the AutoMark in other sections of this presentation. Another help for the voter is the requirement to have chairs available for elderly voters and voters with disabilities to use while they're waiting to vote. As we demonstrate setting up the polling place, keep in mind that the voting machines in your precinct may differ from those pictured here.